On the night I discovered my husband's plot to kill me, simultaneously with the revelation that his paralyzed sibling had been actively moving the entire time. The plan all along had been for a quiet evening supper under the stars, with some gentle music playing in the background and warm lights dancing under the palm trees, heard laughing coming from a table where I ought to have been seated. On the contrary, I hid in the shadows, tucked aside within easy reach, with a little earphone in one hand as the reality erupted like a river into my ears. To paraphrase my mother-in-law, she's never been anything special. Her voice was chilly and clipped. You should at least be strategic about your divorce. Your lawyer can take into account the fact that she is emotionally disturbed. Next thing I knew, my husband's voice crackled. The man I had left my job for before. The one I used to whip up breakfast for first thing in the morning. The assets will be divided in my favor, he murmured, leaning in. In a perfect world, she would get nothing. My heart sank. Trapped behind the swaying palm trees, I could hardly move. My fists were tightly crossed, and when I believed the feeling of betrayal could not be any worse. Across the table, the woman seated next him extended her arm and gently touched his hand. Smiling, he said, it was far from the fake grin I'd become accustomed to seeing recently. It was authentic, warm and fuzzy. As if I were non-existent, screaming was on my mind. However, my arm was delicately stroked before I could respond. Emma it was, his sibling. With calm, steady eyes, she stared at me. Next, she murmured a hushed utterance. Are you all set? In her wheelchair, she was not. She had stood up, optimal position, balanced. Abusquist, strong. My entire universe split in two at that moment. Let's go, she said with a subtle smile. And right then, at that moment, it hit me. I had company in this struggle. Until recently, I was a dream believer. My name is Rachel Morgan. As a child, I used to pretend that everyone would stop what they were doing to listen to me sing into a hairbrush with a full house, my own personal spotlight. There was a time when I believed my voice could take me someplace no map could. Unfortunately, aspirations don't always make it through the real world. I went from mics to spreadsheets after earning a degree in finance from Texas State University. All eyes on the cubicle wall. My new position at an Austin credit union is unremarkable but secure. No risk. The type of work that would satisfy both parents and pay off college loans. Life came to a halt there, right up until I crossed paths with Travis. It happened during a barbecue for former students. In the garden of a person whose name I hardly recalled. It was a hot afternoon with inexpensive beer and plastic chairs. Travis has an endearing charisma, radiating joy with every pore of his face. It was as if the world will magically provide opportunities for him. He exuded an effortless confidence. In the past, he said he had been a dancer. He mentioned that he had been a member of a collegiate hip-hop group before deciding to pursue a career in finance due to parental pressure. He gets it, I thought to myself. Burying a part of oneself is something he is familiar with. Love blossomed between us shortly thereafter. He just decided to surprise me with flowers. I found some notes in my handbag. He gave the impression that he noticed me by playing certain songs on the radio. Met my gaze. A year later, he asked me to be his wife in Zilker Park, where we were kneeling beneath the oak trees and were surrounded by fairy lights. I wholeheartedly accepted. I was under the impression that I was agreeing to be a lifelong collaborator. I left my work after we were married, In Houston, Travis was raking in dough at a financial advising business. He encouraged me to take it easy and maybe return to music after telling me I'd worked too hard. He had my trust. I uprooted my life, left Austin, and abandoned the person I once was. We found a little house outside of Houston and moved in. It was just 20 minutes away from his parents' house. That's when I began to sense more robust. Carolyn, his mother, folded towels with the intensity of a professional athlete. No matter how many times she spoke, I still felt like I was listening to an instruction manual. Rachel, darling, the curtains look prettier when drawn from left to right. Alternatively, make an effort not to let the aroma of garlic linger in the kitchen. It's strong. Emma, Travis's younger sister, came next. According to everyone, she had a history of significant nerve damage from a childhood sickness. She was speechless, totally immobile, seated in a wheelchair at the living room window, her gaze fixated on the sky as if she were observing a realm beyond her reach. Initially, I felt sorry for her. Next, I became aware of something, the way she listened intently to every word spoken. Those remarks that made her grin. Her grip on the pencil was deliberate and solid, not sloppy like an uncoordinated person. I felt uneasy about that, but I didn't probe more. Just why, at all times, Carolyn was close by. They never stopped giving me the finger, constantly bringing up the fact that I wasn't truly a family member. The way some people say "bless your heart" when they really mean "you're pathetic" is how she referred to me as sweet. I couldn't help but smile anyhow. Cereals were made by me. That was my job. Simply put, it is the role of a decent wife, isn't it? They disappear. They change to fit in. Their unity keeps it going, even as the fabric begins to unravel. I nearly denied their existence at first since the fissures were so tiny. Without warning, Travis cut off his daytime texting no more. "How's your lunch?" or "miss you" texts. He would mutter an apology without raising an eyebrow whenever I gave him his morning coffee. Claiming the company was understaffed, he began working later and later. More and more due dates, fresh clientele requiring care. He had my trust. Well, I gave it my best shot. Believe me, when he stopped touching me, it was hard. Eliminated the question of my well-being from questions. I began to cry in the shower, rearranged the living room, and forgot I had done it. At the same time, his mom started dropping by our place more frequently, uninvited at all times. Having a list of directions and a shopping bag on hand at all times. Tossing your shoes by the door is a bad idea, Rachel. The house appears disorganized. Travis dislikes disorganization. Are you sorting his clothes by color? It's always been that way for me. I'd nod. Sure, I'd be happy to. The pain would be swallowed and I would press on. Still, though, there was Emma amidst all this frigidity. She remained silent, skipped walking. However, in some way, she was attentive. Sitting on the back porch with her, I would speak aloud only to hear her voice. In response, she would sketch miniature drawings of birds, windows, and musical notation. I made a treble clef drawing in the air once. Emblazoning her hand over her heart, she grinned. I began studying sign language at that same time. At night, I would sit on the edge of my bed and silently watch American Sign Language films as Travis scribbled on his laptop, beginning with the most fundamentals, hello, thank you, and happy. However, I began to understand the need of articulateness as the weeks progressed, with both physical gestures and genuine presence, having purpose. Emma observed me as if she were already aware. It seemed as if we were both standing behind a door that she had been patiently waiting for me to finally open. And as our relationship deepened, Travis grew progressively icier. His knowledge seemed to surpass mine, as if he could sense a change in the Earth's surface underneath us, but pretended it remained firm. I used to believe that major arguments, including yelling battles, slamming doors, and couch potato nights, were the cause of marital estrangement. However, what nobody tells you is the idea that sometimes remaining silent speaks volumes. The smallest details were where it all began. When Travis brought home the takeout, he stopped inquiring about my dessert preferences, did not wait for me to sit down before beginning to prepare dinner, laughed less at the shows we used to enjoy watching together. He would stay up late, say his boss wanted reports. At the last minute, maybe the traffic was terrible once more. If only I could trust him. Yes, I did. However, his movements around the home, like though I had utterly vanished, it deserved more attention. On one particular evening, subtly I inquired of him, "Are you all right? Are we involved in a relationship?" He remained engrossed on his phone. "Rachel, it's only work. Keep things simple. Keep things simple." My heart was breaking, and it was all because I misjudged. I let go of the button. He ceased acting. In the quiet that descended upon us, more and more, I was relying on Emma. I was greeted by her perceptive wide eyes. She would eagerly touch her sketch pad as soon as I walked in the room, as if she had been waiting for me. Our own beat had emerged. Afternoon tea would be on me. In her cartoons, I would tumble over her mom's overbearing regulations. She managed to get a real chuckle from me, which had been absent for weeks. Carolyn took note. She came up to me as I was combing Emma's hair and said, "That room is making you feel too at ease." I chose not to answer. I didn't feel the need to express myself, although I had realized that. Her quiet cut worse than any sarcasm could. Uncle Travis remained silent as expected, upon bringing up the manner in which Carolyn addressed me. "That's just how she is," he shrugged. "I can't stand how you take everything personally." I decided to cease informing him. He also ceased inquiring. I baked Emma her favorite pumpkin bread one wet Sunday. In an effort to catch her off guard, I carried it to their residence. However, I could hear laughing as I entered. In the living room, Carolyn and Travis were laughing uncontrollably, a sound that had escaped him for months. He flinched as he laid eyes on me. "Oh no, are you present?" As I delicately placed the tray on the coffee table, I whispered, "I prepared this for Emma." "You failed to inform me that you would be present," he whispered. Carly intervened. "Family are welcome to stop by whenever they like." How she pronounced family, surface-heated, subsurface sharp, provided me with all the necessary information. Towards the window, I strode. Without her sketch pad, Emma sat in her customary position, her lap propped up on a plush blue pillow. She gave me that look, slowly blinking. Under my signature, I wrote, "I'm okay." My hands, though, were trembling. Upon our return home that evening with Travis, he remained silent. After putting my coat away, I pivoted to confront him. "Are you withholding any information from me?" With a moment he spoke. "For what type of inquiry is that framed?" "I am uncertain. To put it simply, I feel as though you are no longer truly present." Rubbing his temples, he moaned. "Work is work. Think less, please." Once more there it was, thinking too much. But in my heart, I was certain that wasn't a hallucination. An unexpected incident occurred. I felt alone in my efforts to keep everything together. I found out they were flying to Hawaii the morning Travis informed me. Some part of me snapped. His expressionless face betrayed him as he entered the kitchen and stated a family vacation is next week on the agenda for my parents. A little escape. I grinned, taken aback, yet optimistic. I like the sound of that. Will it be Hawaii? We had discussed the possibility of celebrating our anniversary there. Does anyone recall? He returned no grin. His gaze remained fixed on the ground. When it comes to this instance, well, it's not necessarily other people. My family, mom, dad, and sister. They like to keep things modest. A beat skipped in my heart. I squinted. So what about me? The table held Travis's undivided attention. We were anticipating that you would remain behind. Emma to observe. She's only genuinely close to you, and no one else. There was a split second when I froze. It was difficult to breathe due to the agony of being abandoned once more, this time on purpose. So you're after me to remain, being at home by myself. Although you're all away on vacation, without a word to my face. She can't travel, he said with an air of preparedness. You are aware of that. That's excessive. Additionally, she has a favorable impression of you. You're great around her. The doorbell rang before I could answer. Carolyn walked in with her typical poise, scarcely waiting for an invitation. I suppose Travis clarified everything, she remarked, her scrutiny scrutinizing me as if I were a failing score on an assignment. Ivy Emma will require oversight. I know you get it. She remained silent. It is so, she said, almost like I were an employee. And that was only another responsibility. Screaming was on my mind. On the contrary, I stated, sure thing, I'll make sure she's okay. Without saying a word, Carolyn nodded in satisfaction and departed. After she took off, Travis trailed following, pausing enough to murmur, my apologies. I apologize for making things difficult for you. Everything is already set up. He caught my gaze. You seem to have already decided before you informed me. He remained silent. With an overnight bag and a calm spirit, I made my way to their place that evening. The sun's dwindling rays played with Emma's locks as she sat at the window. It was as if I had a magical effect on her. I signed laboriously, Are you cool with my spending a few days at your place? Then she blinked. Afterwards, she signed something completely new to me. They abandoned you, once more. It was devastating. She had stopped sketching. Something was conveyed by her, speaking the truth to one another. With a nod, I concurred. I think so. Their destination was Hawaii. While Emma gazed at me, then signed an item that caught my breath. We hold plans as well. After that, I took a pause. I don't understand. She only grinned. Her comments jumbled about in my head like a puzzle that night. As I lay awake in the guest room, I remembered her favorite flavor of vanilla coffee and delivered it to her the next morning. After a quick knock, I unlocked the door. She continued her habit of lying on her side and gazing out the window. I said, I brought you coffee vanilla blend. Pinch me. Her head cocked a little. After that, her body shifted, assisted herself, perched erect, shock not, hard work not required. Maintaining my grip on the cup, I froze. With that, she rose to her feet, complete height, balanced, without reservation. I was gasping for air. How are you spending your time? Silently I spoke. My darling Emma was amused. A clear, gentle, and comforting chuckle, a soothing phrase, escaped her lips as she spoke. Don't lose it. Took a near miss with the coffee. Are you capable of communication? And stroll. She came over to me as if it were second nature, nodding as she did so. I was always able to do it. What a mess. Anything one does. Without uttering a word, I parted my lips. Why, at last I succeeded. For how long were you going to pretend? With a steady, soothing voice, she took a seat across from me. You can't call me Travis's complete sister. His father's first wife was my mom. You can't call Carolyn my mother. Never gave me the warm and fuzzy feeling of family. I mean, come on, similar to a duty. Knees trembling, I sank into a slow chair. I developed a fever when I was 10 years old. The ride to the hospital was not provided by Carolyn. Told my neighbors that I had suffered brain injury. Following that, silence fell upon me. It was less risky. Years of assumptions seemed to be crumbling away from me. You fooled around during all of this. Not indefinitely, she stated. That is until I was spotted by an individual. We met in eye contact. Rachel, you noticed me, regarded positively, not in the sense of duty. As an individual, quietness filled the room. Coming to her feet, she proceeded to the closet, where she retrieved a compact travel bag. Be sure to bring a bag, she said. Hawaii is our destination. I squinted. Excuse me, she smiled. The tickets were reserved weeks ago, plus the hotel. Dad gave me a little money. I was holding it off till the perfect time. I looked at her as if she were an unfamiliar person, but also being stranger-like in comparison to everyone else I'd ever met. Why is it at this moment silently I spoke? A grave expression replaced Emma's once charismatic grin. Rachel, you must realize the truth. You must understand Carolyn and Travis say for who they truly are. She grasped my hand. As for Hawaii, lies the point of no return. As ChatGPT put it, incredibly, I was on a plane to Hawaii. It was just yesterday that my husband and his family were enjoying Mai Tais on the beach, and I was requested to assume the role of caregiver. Right now, sitting next to his paralyzed sister, who had just divulged a secret that had been kept for a decade, I found myself on that very island. With her hair pulled back and sunglasses obscuring the sparkle in her eyes, Emma sported a plain white t-shirt and trousers. Contrary to what everyone thought, she appeared to be strong and capable. She looked seemingly unbeatable. I was in such a state of panic when we touched down in Honolulu. Emma reserved a 5-star resort with everything we could want. Blue infinity pools, white sand beaches, and leis from the resort workers dressed in floral blouses. My room key was casually handed to me by her. The entire amount had been paid by her own hand. Wow, you managed to pull this off. That night, while we sat in our suite, listening to the water hum outside the glass doors, I inquired. She grinned. When he went away, my dad left me a fortune. Carolyn was clueless. I've been putting it aside for a purpose. However, the lodging, the journeys, I timed everything down to the last detail. Their accommodation is a suite beside the pool in the building across the street. Their dinner reservation is at $600 today, thanks to Mom. I set the appointment for $700, very same eatery. I choked. So what's our plan? An expression of genuine seriousness crossed her face as she met my gaze. We're going to give them the opportunity to reveal their true selves. I wore a long blue dress and styled my hair in waves that night. Emma radiated an air of subtle self-assurance as she strode along each corridor we crossed in her green silk jacket. We were almost at the restaurant when I heard the first clink of glasses and the first squeals of delight. Emma stopped short of the deck, positioned herself behind a line of palm plants. She said, her finger pointing to the corner table. Then I peered around the corner. A real unforced chuckle escaped Carolyn. A woman I had never seen before was leaning in near Travis. A young woman she was, stylish, very lovely. Additionally, she rested her palm on his knee. A chill ran down my spine. Emma said, I saw messages on Carolyn's phone. She describes her as the backup plan. I was gasping for air. When Emma placed a little wireless earbud into my palm, that was it. I concealed a recorder beneath their table earlier in the day. I promise they will tell you something important. My heart was racing as I inserted. After that, Screams erupted. Carolyn nonchalantly replied, "She's nothing special," as if she were commenting on the weather. Trav let out a laugh. "I can avoid paying alimony if we claim she is emotionally disturbed. We may be able to turn this around to my advantage, according to my lawyer." Carolyn lifted her chalice. "She has never helped out this family in any way." "Well, this new gal definitely has some guts." It was that. My palms became numb, my teeth clenched. I took the earbud out, put it in my purse, and turned to stare at Emma. She remained silent. She only nodded. We emerged from the shade of the palm trees, our steps resonating on the uneven wooden floor. Up first, Travis glanced. His grin faded away in an instant. With her wine glass dangling precariously, Carolyn halted her laughter. Just a few steps away from their table, I paused and remarked in a calm voice, "Estimate evening. I hope the meal is going well for everyone." Stunned, Travis rose to his feet. "What about Rachel? How are you? What are you?" Quickly, Emma came over to be by my side as he finished. She was the center of attention. With a stride forward, she made a gradual pace. With assurance, I didn't see a wheelchair. She let out a gasp from Carolyn. So you're on foot?" A cock tilted Emma's head. "I've been walking for a long time. I simply believed it would be more convenient for you if I refrained." Evidently recognizing she had entered into something larger than herself, the new woman reclined in her chair. Then I took out my mobile. Then I hit play on the tape. Carolyn's words echoed through the broad space. "Say she has mood swings, done absolutely nothing to help this family." Then there was Travis's voice, absolutely distinct. "We have a chance to win this time." No sound. Nothing was spoken at the next tables. Suddenly, Travis sprung out of his chair. "Dear Rachel, excuse me, what on earth are you up to?" What an embarrassment. I stared him down square in the face. "For months you've been making fun of me, only behind closed doors." In a state of utter chaos, Carolyn fumbled for her napkin. "We feel qualified to provide an explanation." "No need," I interjected. "The evidence is with me. Plus, tomorrow morning, I will be meeting with my attorney." Travis extended his arm to seize my arm, but I retreated. "I think you've already decided, Travis. Now it's up to you to deal with it." The newcomer got to her feet swiftly, attempting to blend in with the onlookers, but Emma yelled after her with an icy tone of voice, "An attorney may be useful to you as well. There are legal repercussions for adultery in several places." His cheeks flushed red as wrath burned into Travis's flesh. "It's like you're deliberately making my life hell." It was nearly funny. "You were the one who did that." Two security men flanked the restaurant manager as he suddenly materialized. "I apologize, sir," the manager stated with conviction. "We'll have to politely request that you depart. You're making other people uncomfortable." In an effort to voice his disapproval, Travis noticed that all eyes were fixed on him. He allowed them to lead him out by keeping quiet. Stillness gripped Carolyn as she sat there, her hand quivering as she held her wine glass, her powerful expression gone. Me and Emma pivoted. We got up and left. Quiet down, stay dry. No sound at all, only the tapping of feet on teakwood and the crashing of a falsehood behind us. Once we returned to our suite, I lingered at the window for quite a while, taking in the incoming waves and the sun setting over the horizon in a languid, heavy stillness. I had been second-guessing myself for months, gaslighting my own intuition, asking myself whether I was much too sensitive or overly dependent. Then it hit me. I could feel it in my bones. Who brought up my husband? His mother. I wed this man. They had spoken about me as if I were an expense, to avoid a liability to be removed. I contacted a Houston law firm the next morning after a college buddy had suggested it. Marilyn Carter, who specializes in civil litigation and divorce, was linked to me by the receptionist. Her tone was soothing, polished, and welcoming. I spilled the beans to her, beginning with Travis's gradual withdrawal and continuing through Carolyn's therapy and Emma's disclosure. Using the phone, I played the recording. Details of the meal were provided. The heiress, my deliberate attempt to be seen as unstable. After giving it her complete attention, Marilyn spoke. "There's more than enough for you to submit. The use of force, emotional desertion, adultery. Along with, if you're up for it, suing the other lady for third-party alienation." Breathing out carefully, I let out a whiff. I want to comply with all legal requirements. End of the era of peacekeeping. The agony is no longer sucked down. Marilyn's answer was straightforward. With that, we will deal with it. After then, progress was rapid. Emma relinquished Carolyn's phone and all of its old texts. Travis found evidence of 2 clients on his hotel records. The case file now has all the necessary information, including screenshots, phone records, and bank transfers. The divorce paperwork arrived at Travis's office 1 week later, delivered to the front desk. I received his call that very night. It was his voice that I had not heard since supper. "For example, Rachel, why don't we have a chat? Will you kindly, there is no need for this to get nasty." I chose not to answer. My call ended just now. After that, the emails began. Texts follow. Later on, communications from pals with whom you have common interests. Still, I maintained my silence. I'd been unproductively silent for far too long. Right now, the strength was in my refraining from speaking. He finally made it to my Houston apartment 3 weeks after I had asked him to. He seemed fatigued, no beard. Shirt that was once pristine is now wrinkled and worn. He said, "I lost my job," absent-mindedly. Once word of the tape spread, they released me. The individual claimed that it was unethical. In the doorway I stood, crossed arms. Meline, she abandoned me. She claimed she had not anticipated this kind of controversy. He attempted to chuckle. Not me. As for Mom, my dad dumped her. They lost most of their money since he departed. Her bank account is empty, is homeless and without a permanent residence. A halt followed, keeping quiet in order to provoke shame. "For example, Rachel, we're both aware that we've messed up. Still, we're here for you as family." With a hint of curiosity, I cocked my head. "Were you asking for my assistance?" The sound of his voice was gnarled. "Just an item that will help us endure. You've always been the most generous person, the one who is steady." Standing on the walkway behind him was Carolyn. Her formerly judgmental expression had faded, and she dropped her gaze and crossed her arms tightly. It is quite disheartening. Weariness as well. All those times I'd grinned at her as she gave me scathing, underhanded comments flooded my mind. Why she never once stood up for me, never once expressed gratitude for my care of Emma. She treated me like a passing fad, staring straight through me. I locked eyes with Travis. "I implored you, as a token of appreciation, in all candor, just a tiny bit of empathy." And there was complete quiet. He seemed to be trying to balance himself by reaching for the doorframe. All right, I was incorrect. I acted foolishly. "I was sure I could fix it," I said. I whispered no. "You really believed I wouldn't resist." I gently shut the door. No need to bang it furiously, however, to conclude it definitively. Upon returning from our Hawaiian vacation, Emma gave me a little container of sea salt, which I promptly opened after making my way to my balcony. It was just a little ritual, she had grinned and informed us. We must eradicate the shadows they have cast. I let the grains float in the breeze as I sprinkled a line down the doorway. This is not due to my faith in magic, yet I was a firm believer in making my own decisions. Within 2 months, the divorce was formalized. The judge mandated that Travis and his wife divide their assets 50-50. I was awarded spousal maintenance for 3 years by the court. The woman he brought to Hawaii, Meline, was the subject of a civil complaint alleging intervention by a third party. Money wasn't the only factor. Conceptually, it was important. I was trying to prove that I wasn't expendable. It was not a feeling of accomplishment that I had when the first money came into my account. I experienced a sense of back in working order. That evening, Emma and I went out to eat. Silence and sparkling cider were our toasts. The stillness that follows a fierce storm. "You're free," she remarked with a smile. With a nod, I concurred. And I am too. Moving to Denver not long after, she finally enrolled in the graphic design program of her dreams. Once buried in sketchbooks, her art now displayed in galleries across town. At last she could be heard, an area. What about me? I relocated to a studio apartment on the top floor of an Austin building, with a view of Lady Bird Lake, next to where I went to college. As if going full circle, yet more powerful, I returned to consulting this time, doing financial work for customers I valued on my own terms. I raised barriers. Up next to my workstation on a whiteboard, I had written, "What they said about you is not true." Every afternoon, I still brew a pot of tea, continue to hum while I sort clothes. But nowadays, nobody thinks it's a waste of time. Healing is what they call it. On a peaceful Sunday afternoon, someone rang the doorbell. I had no idea anyone would show up. There was no shipment, without a scheduled meeting. There is only myself, the gentle hum of an acoustic music playlist, and the warm sunshine pouring through the windows of my flat. Upon opening the door, I went completely still. There they stood, as if they were specters that had wandered into daylight, were Carolyn and Travis. Unfortunately, they didn't appear to be themselves. Weight loss had occurred in Travis. He was very exhausted with sunken eyes, as if he no longer cared. His once perfect hair hung limp. With her creased coat, filthy shoes, and overall unappealing appearance, Carolyn seemed even worse, less large. It was the first time I had ever seen a lady who didn't appear to be in charge. It seemed like she had exhausted all of her options. "Rachel," Travis began, his voice raspy. "Please, why don't we have a chat?" I remained seated. They weren't invited. With my palm on the doorframe, I remained still. As he moved, his gaze darted about, avoiding my face. "I was completely devastated," he declared. "The litigation led to my dismissal from my employment. The second the checks ceased, Meline departed from me. I'm just getting by." Silence fell upon me. My dad abandoned my mom. Right now, she has nothing. A home is not there. Not a savings. Just a moment, please. Attempting to stay alive. At Carolyn, I cast my gaze. She remained silent, her head bowed and her hands folded, as if she were a pupil facing punishment. Whispering, Travis said, "I know you have every reason to detest us. However, if you hold on to any recollection of our past together," at that point I broke my silence. "Quite a bit," she said. I spoke in a steady tone. "Very nice, resilient enough. I begged for respect, you know. I was lied to, humiliated, and treated like garbage as far as I can remember. I recall that you were plotting my eradication," as she grinned at a different woman. And he recoiled in terror. Carolyn blinked rapidly, perhaps to hold back tears. Or blame. No clear answer. At last she spoke, her voice rough and hoarse. "Rachel, I was incorrect, utterly mistaken. but no one else is available. Possibly I was simply thinking, perhaps you might lend us a hand with this. After then, there was a dense air of quiet. I gently cocked my head, avoiding nasty. I mean, come on. Without ambiguity, I find it humorous. A little compassion from you was something I used to wish for. It is now up to you. Travis seemed on the verge of sobbing. He tried, but I stopped him. I don't despise you, I whispered gently. I simply beg forgiveness for believing you were worth the suffering. Then whispering softly, with no crashing or banging. At that I shut the door, firmly, and lastly, the tunes continued to play within. Even now the light had a golden hue, and I remained unencumbered. I refrained from sobbing after the door slammed shut behind them. I refrained from shaking or mentally replaying their faces as much as before. I merely strolled over to my balcony, inhaled deeply, wore a grin. It had been years, but I finally felt like I was the only one in my life. All of my belongings from my previous life were packed up and transported into a warm apartment in Santa Barbara, California that week. Situated only 3 blocks from the shore, it was little and unadorned. The type of spot where you could always count on the scent of salt and citrus wafting through the air from the open windows. No, I wasn't trying to escape. Going forth was my choice. I created After the Storm as a podcast to provide women a safe place to talk about their experiences with emotional manipulation, covert abuse, and the courage it took to escape. Filters not implemented. No phony motivational sayings here. Truth alone. I was surprised by how well it did. The logo and abstract of a shattered shell evolving into a wave was created by Emma. Not long after that, she uprooted her life and headed to Denver to attend school for graphic design. Like fellow survivors of the same shipwreck, we encouraged one another, spoke weekly, and shared audio recordings and doodles. Sometime during a call, she mentioned that you were the first one to see her. You inspired me to live life to the fullest. Words she spoke stayed with me. We made the decision to construct something larger at that point. Voices Reclaimed is an online community that we co-founded. It all began with a forum for women who were healing from betrayal. However, its growth was rapid. Free protective legal letter templates were made available to you. Held narrative circles where participants remain anonymous. Documentation for recovery procedures was filed. Volunteering their time to assist women in finding their way back to themselves, we welcomed attorneys, therapists, and even financial consultants. It had no commercial purpose. A mission it was. Neither of us was merely a stepsister or an ex-wife. It was us. That power isn't always audible. On occasion, it creeps up stealthily as limits in terms of pardon. And lastly, saying no. I was a keynote speaker at a San Diego Women's Leadership Conference one night. The room was jam-packed. Give me a moment of fame. I related my experience of betrayal and subsequent numbness. The manner in which I had failed to identify my reflection in the mirror. Also how seeking vengeance was completely unrelated to recovering my voice. And all things related to recalling the fact that I possessed one. At my completion, the room rose to its feet. This isn't about drama. Nothing about the recording or the victory in court. On the other hand, because I had survived to report the facts, this prompted others to extend an invitation. It takes time for the body to heal. It occurs the second you decide your suffering was actual. You have the power to build your own future. Through it all, if there's one thing I've learned about life, that power isn't necessarily audible is the point. It's not always the exact second you turn the table over or pull off a flawless response in the middle of a packed restaurant. Sometimes it's less noisy than that. Distancing yourself from someone you still care about is a tough decision. To love oneself more in the end, the key is to avoid being misunderstood without more explanation being necessary. Closing the door is what it is, very gently. The reason isn't frailty, however, you have had enough of pleading with people who never paid attention to hear you. To be a decent wife, I used to believe, was to give up a lot. That if I could just maintain my composure and patience while they folded the towels to their liking. If they could, they would recognize my value. Yet the reality, a companion isn't necessary for everyone. They may need a stand-in, someone to take the fall, in order to hold the emotional load, to laugh off slights, apologies when you're wounded. What surprises them is that the placeholder will eventually become active, then it departs. My takeaway is this. Perhaps it may be of use to you as well. 1. A person's ease should never be mistaken for your mission. Their comfort with your little stature is all it takes. It's not necessary that you remain silent. 2. Limits are not sanctions. A person is not being cruel if they avoid others who disrupt their equilibrium. You are not being dramatic when you request basic respect. 3. Healers are strong even when they don't seem it. On certain days, you could question your abilities. When you long for the first impression someone gave you. When you find yourself dwelling on past mistakes and trying to figure out how to prevent them, until finally, you halt. The air you inhale is vital. A smile forms on your face. You chuckle without having to clarify your reasoning. It dawns on you. It's your voice again. 4. Those who have wronged you will sometimes come back to haunt you. Not out of any sense of regret. However, since their fresh supply was depleted, as a result of the fantasy falling apart, you were the rock-solid one the whole time. On that fateful day, keep in mind the person you transformed into in order to endure their absence. Recall your current identity. Nobody has a right to see the you that they attempted to destroy. 5. Finally, there is no room for dispute about your value. By no means by your spouse. Wholly unrelated to them. No one who loved you for the sake of convenience. Those who were uncaring do not need to provide closure for you. You can find fulfillment without seeking vengeance. Serenity is what you want. Furthermore, tranquility is the result of the truth triumphing against deceit. To anyone is listening, then everyone who has ever been exploited, gaslighted, ignored, or burdened, I can't help but adore you. Nothing about you is too much. You are not insane for seeing the change or for challenging the status quo. In their telling of events, they degraded you. You are more than that. You are free to stand up in order to reassemble again. Get your life back, your name back, and your space back. Furthermore, the moment you do this, before you know it, being left behind was never meant to be a kind of punishment. That was the green light, allowing one to start anew at your leisure.
Bisam sa habisim.